I was sitting in my daughter's kitchen in Buckhead at 2 in the morning, holding my 3-week-old grandson while he screamed his little lungs out, when I heard the front door open downstairs. My son-in-law, Brandon, stumbled in smelling like expensive cologne and cheap decisions. "Oh, you're still up," he said, like I was the one who needed to explain myself. I looked at him, his shirt half untucked, his tie loosened, his eyes glassy in that way that said he'd had more than a few drinks, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "The baby's been crying for 2 hours, I said quietly. "Your wife is upstairs sleeping for the first time in 3 days. Where have you been?" "Client dinner ran late." He didn't even look at me when he said it. Just grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and headed toward the stairs. "Thanks for helping out, Joyce. You can head home now if you want." Like I was the babysitter. Like this wasn't my grandson, my daughter, my family falling apart in this big beautiful house that was supposed to represent everything she'd achieved. I didn't go home. Instead, I sat in that designer kitchen, all white marble and stainless steel, the kind of kitchen I'd never been able to afford in my own modest house in Cascade Heights, and rocked my grandson until the sun came up. And I started paying attention to things I'd been trying not to see for months. My name is Joyce Mitchell. I'm 56 years old, and I spent 32 years as a registered nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. I worked every shift they'd give me, days, nights, weekends, holidays, to raise my daughter Maya after her father decided being a husband and parent wasn't for him. I put Maya through Spelman College with no loans, no debt, nothing holding her back. Watched her graduate with honors, get a good job in marketing, meet a man who seemed like everything I'd prayed for. Brandon Hayes. Corporate sales manager at a tech company. 6 figures. Nice car. Bought Maya that house in Buckhead with the 2-car garage and the professionally landscaped yard. Proposed with a ring that cost more than I made in 6 months. I'd wanted to be happy about it. I was happy about it at first. But somewhere along the way, I'd started noticing things. The way Brandon talked about his house and his money, even though Maya worked full-time too. The way he'd make little comments about my neighborhood when he picked Maya up from my place. "You really should let me help you move somewhere safer, Joyce. This area's going downhill." Like I hadn't raised his wife in that same neighborhood. Like going downhill wasn't code for too many people who look like us who don't make as much money as I do. But I'd bitten my tongue. Because Maya loved him. Because they were building a life. Because I told myself that every marriage has its rough edges, and it wasn't my place to smooth them out. Then Maya got pregnant. She'd been so happy. We both were. After years of watching her build her career, seeing her ready to be a mother felt like watching a dream come full circle. Brandon had seemed excited too at first. Posted about it on social media, told everyone at work, started talking about legacy and passing things down. But when Maya went on maternity leave, something shifted. She'd call me in the middle of the day, exhausted and overwhelmed, saying Brandon had to work late again, had a client dinner again, had a team-building event again. Always something keeping him out of the house while she was 7, 8, 9 months pregnant, and barely able to tie her own shoes. I'd drive over from my side of town, bring her dinner, rub her swollen feet, listen to her try to convince herself, and me, that this was normal. That sales managers work long hours. That he was building their future. That once the baby came, he'd be more present. The baby came 3 weeks ago. A beautiful boy they named Justin, after Brandon's father. 7 pounds 4 ounces. 10 perfect fingers. 10 perfect toes. Lungs that could wake the whole neighborhood. And Brandon? Brandon had been at the hospital for the birth. Barely. He'd left Maya laboring for 12 hours while he took some calls, in the parking lot. Showed up for the actual delivery, cut the cord, took some photos for Instagram, then disappeared to handle some work emergencies. Idistaya. Of course I'd stayed. I'd held Maya's hand through every contraction, coached her through every push, been the first one to hold Justin after the nurses cleaned him up. When they brought Maya home 2 days later, I'd taken a week off from my part-time consulting work. I'd semi-retired 2 years ago but still helped train new nurses. And moved into their guest room. That was 3 weeks ago. I was still here. Because Maya needed me. Because Justin was colicky and screamed for hours every night. Because Maya was struggling, not just with the sleepless nights and the physical recovery from a difficult labor, but with something deeper. Something I recognized from my years in nursing, but hadn't wanted to name yet. Postpartum depression. I'd seen it in her eyes. The way she'd stare at nothing for long stretches. The way she'd cry over small things, spilled milk, a onesie that didn't fit right, a diaper that leaked. The way she'd apologize to me over and over for being a burden, for not being good at this, for failing at the one thing women are supposed to know how to do. I'd held her while she cried and told her what I'd told 1,000 new mothers over 3 decades. You're not failing. You're healing. You're learning. You're doing everything right, baby. This is just hard. It's supposed to be hard. But what I couldn't say, what was burning a hole in my chest every time I looked at her, was that it would be a hell of a lot less hard if her husband was actually here. Brandon had been home maybe 2 hours a day since they'd brought Justin home. He'd show up around noon. His sales job apparently didn't require him to be in the office early. Spend an hour eating lunch and maybe holding the baby if Justin wasn't crying. Then leave for meetings that somehow always lasted until midnight or later. 4 nights out of the last 7, he hadn't come home until after 2 in the morning. And Mama was tired of pretending not to notice. That morning, after Brandon stumbled in smelling like a club, and went upstairs without even checking on his son, I sat in that kitchen and looked around. On the counter was a stack of mail I'd been organizing for Maya. She was too exhausted to deal with it. Hospital bills, insurance statements, subscription boxes she'd ordered while pregnant and forgot to cancel. And underneath all of that, a credit card statement. I wasn't snooping. Not exactly. But the envelope was open, and the total balance was printed right there on the front fold. $8,462. I picked it up. Started reading. Houston's Lounge, $340. Vault, $520. Revel, $280. Uber, $45. Uber, $62. Uber, $38. Houston's Lounge, $410.
Suite Lounge, $625.
The charges went on and on. Clubs, bars, late-night Ubers, bottle service, VIP sections. All of it from the last 3 weeks, since Justin was born. I sat there with that statement in my hands, my grandson finally quiet in my arms, and felt my blood pressure rise in that way that made my old nursing instructor's voices echo in my head. Joyce, take a breath before you say something you can't take back. I took a breath. Then I took a photo of that credit card statement with my phone. Not because I knew what I was going to do with it yet, but because 32 years of nursing had taught me one unshakable truth. Document everything. Always have evidence. Because the time will come when you need to prove what you know. And feelings don't hold up in court, facts do. I'd learned that lesson dealing with hospital administrators who tried to cover up mistakes. Insurance companies who denied claims. Doctors who lied to protect themselves. The medical field taught you real quick. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. And if you want to hold someone accountable, you better have receipts. I put my phone back in my pocket and carried Justin upstairs. Maya was sleeping in their bedroom. The door opened just a crack so she could hear if the baby cried. I peeked in. She was curled up on her side, still wearing the same nursing tank top she'd had on yesterday, her hair tied up in a silk scarf, her face slack with exhaustion. Brandon was next to her, already snoring, still in his work pants. I closed the door quietly and took Justin to the nursery. The room was perfect. Designer crib, custom curtains, one of those expensive rocking chairs that cost more than my first car. Everything color coordinated in soft grays and whites. Everything curated for Instagram. Everything except the man who was supposed to be helping take care of the child who slept in it. I settled into that expensive rocking chair and looked down at my grandson. He'd finally stopped crying, his little face peaceful now, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. Your daddy's making some bad choices, baby boy, I whispered. And your mama's too tired and too heartbroken to see it yet. But your grandmother? Your grandmother sees everything. And I didn't work 32 years in a hospital, dealing with every kind of man who thought he could charm his way out of consequences, To watch my daughter suffer in silence while her husband treats this family like an inconvenience. Justin made a small sound in his sleep. I kissed his forehead. On the dresser across from me was a photo from Maya and Brandon's wedding 3 years ago. Both of them smiling, looking at each other like they'd hung the moon. Maya in that beautiful dress we'd picked out together. Brandon in his tuxedo, looking every inch the successful young man who was going to give my daughter the life she deserved. I'd believed it then. I'd wanted to believe it. But wanting something doesn't make it true. I pulled out my phone and looked at that credit card statement again. All those charges. All that money spent on clubs and bars and bottle service while his wife was at home, bleeding and crying and trying to figure out how to keep a tiny human alive on 3 hours of sleep. Then I opened my text messages and scrolled to my friend Denise's name. Denise and I had gone to nursing school together almost 40 years ago. We'd worked at Grady together for 25 years. She'd retired 5 years before I did, but we still met for lunch once a month, still went to the same church, still called each other when life got complicated. And Denise's daughter, Jasmine, worked as a bartender at one of the upscale clubs in Buckhead. I typed, "You awake?" 3 dots appeared immediately. Denise was a night owl, always had been. Girl, yes. What's wrong? Need to ask you something about Jasmine's job. Can I call you tomorrow? Call me now if you need to. You know I'm here. I looked at the time.
6:47 am.
I'd call her later, after I'd had some coffee and figured out exactly what I wanted to ask. But I already knew what I was going to find out. Because in 32 years of nursing, I'd seen every kind of man come through those hospital doors. The ones who stayed by their wives' sides through labor. The ones who showed up drunk. The ones who didn't show up at all. The ones who had mistresses waiting in the parking lot. The ones who treated their families like obligations instead of blessings. I'd seen them all. And I knew exactly what kind of man Brandon Hayes was turning out to be. The sun was coming up over Buckhead now, light filtering through those expensive custom curtains. In a few hours, Brandon would wake up, shower, put on another expensive suit, and leave for another day of meetings. Maya would wake up exhausted, try to take care of Justin alone, and probably call me crying by noon asking if I could come over again. And I would. Because that's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do. But I was done just showing up and keeping quiet. Brandon thought he could have it all. The perfect house, the beautiful wife, the baby for his Instagram feed, and the nightlife of a single man. He thought because he made good money and paid the mortgage, he could do whatever he wanted. He thought wrong. Because what Brandon didn't know, what a lot of men don't know until it's too late, is that the women in their lives aren't just sitting around waiting to be taken care of. We're watching. We're documenting. We're gathering information. We're building cases in our heads, connecting dots, remembering every lie and every broken promise. And when the time comes, we don't just get mad. We get even. I looked down at Justin one more time, then back at that wedding photo on the dresser. Your daddy's about to learn something, sweet boy, I whispered. He's about to learn that when you disrespect a black woman who raised a daughter by herself, worked 2 jobs to pay for college, and spent 32 years fighting for people in hospital rooms, you don't just lose her respect. You lose everything. I didn't know exactly what my plan was yet, but I knew where to start. Document everything. Build the case. Protect my daughter and my grandson. And when the time was right, make sure Brandon Hayes understood that some debts can't be paid with money. They had no idea I'd already started pulling threads. Now, before I tell you what I found next, let me ask you something. If you're watching this and thinking, Joyce, what did you do? Hit that subscribe button because trust me, what comes next is going to make you want to hear every single detail. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Atlanta? Memphis? Charlotte? Birmingham? I want to know who's out there hearing these stories and nodding their heads saying, I know that's right. Alright, now back to what I discovered. I called Denise at 9 o'clock that morning, after Bran. Dawn had left for work, and Maya was nursing Justin in her bedroom. Girl, what's going on? Denise answered on the first ring. You sounded stressed in that text. I told her everything. The late nights. The credit card charges. The way Brandon barely looked at his own son. The way Maya was falling apart while her husband acted like a bachelor. Denise was quiet for a moment after I finished. You think he's cheating? I think he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. And I think Jasmine might have seen him. Another pause. You want me to ask her? I need to know what I'm dealing with before I say anything to Maya. Because if I'm wrong, I don't want to put that poison in her head. But if I'm right. If you're right, you need evidence, Denise finished. Solid evidence. Not just suspicious charges and late nights. That's what I'm thinking. Let me talk to Jasmine. She's working tonight, but I'll call her this afternoon and feel her out. If Brandon's been showing his face at these clubs, baby, she'll know. Those bartenders see everything. Thank you. Joyce. Yeah. You doing okay? I know this has got to be tearing you up. I looked toward the stairs, where I could hear May laughing softly at something Justin was doing. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh in days. I'm angry, I said quietly. I'm so angry I can barely see straight. But I'm more worried about her than I am about him. She's not okay, Denise. I think she's dealing with postpartum depression. And instead of having a partner to help her through it, she's got a man who's treating his family like a side project. Then you do what you need to do, Joyce. And you know I'm here for whatever you need. Evidence, testimony, a witness, bail money, whatever. I laughed despite myself. Let's hope it doesn't come to bail money. Girl, with the way you sounded, I'm not ruling anything out. After I hung up with Denise, I spent the morning taking care of Justin while Maya tried to sleep. The baby had finally settled into something resembling a routine, if you could call 2-hour stretches of sleep a routine. But he was still colicky, still crying more than he wasn't. I'd learned all the tricks over 32 years of working in the maternity ward. The specific way to hold a colicky baby. The sounds that sometimes soothe them. The patience required to just exist in the discomfort, and not take it personally when nothing worked. But I'd also learned something else. The best medicine for a struggling mother wasn't advice or techniques. It was presence. Someone being there to say, I've got him. You rest. You're not alone. Maya hadn't had that from her husband. She'd had it from me, but I was her mother. That was different. That didn't count the same way as having your partner, the person you chose to build a life with, show up and share the weight. Around 11, Maya came downstairs. She looked a little better, showered, wearing clean clothes, her hair down. Morning, Mama, she said, kissing my cheek and then Justin's head. How long has he been asleep? About 45 minutes. I'm hoping we can stretch it to an hour this time. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thanks for staying again last night. I know you probably have stuff to do at home. Baby, stop. I'm exactly where I need to be. I just feel like I'm failing at this. Her voice cracked. Everyone acts like motherhood is supposed to be instinct, like you're just supposed to know what to do. But I don't know what I'm doing. And Brandon keeps saying. She stopped. Looked away. Brandon keeps saying what? Nothing. It's fine. Maya. She sighed. He keeps saying I need to figure it out, because he can't keep taking time off work. He said other women manage fine, so I should be able to handle it. He said I'm being dramatic about how tired I am. I felt my jaw tighten. He said that. He's stressed, Mama. His job is demanding, and I know he's trying to provide for us. Stop making excuses for him. The sharpness in my voice surprised both of us. Maya looked at me, eyes wide. I took a breath. Softened my tone. Baby, listen to me. You grew a human being inside your body for 9 months. You went through labor for 12 hours. Your body is still healing from major trauma. You're sleep deprived, you're hormonal. You're learning how to keep a tiny person alive 24 hours a day. And on top of all that, you're dealing with postpartum depression. Yes, you are, and we need to talk about getting you some help for that. And instead of supporting you, your husband is telling you to figure it out? He's just being selfish. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Tears started sliding down Maya's face. I didn't want to say anything because I know how you feel about him already. This isn't about how I feel about him. This is about how he's treating you. About how he's failing as a husband and a father. I stood up, still holding Justin, and walked over to her. Baby, you're not dramatic. You're not failing. You're doing everything right in an impossible situation. And the person who promised to be your partner is leaving you to handle it alone. But he's working. Is he? She looked up at me confused. I shouldn't have said it. Not yet. Not without more information. But the words were out now. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, have you seen his schedule? Have you checked where he actually is when he says he's at client dinners and team events? Mama, you can't just accuse. I'm not accusing. I'm asking. Because the amount of work events that keep a man out until 2 in the morning, 4 or 5 nights a week, right after his wife has a baby? That doesn't add up to me. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, you think he's cheating. I think something's not right. And I think you deserve to know the truth. I think something's not right. And I think you deserve to know the truth. I can't deal with this right now. She was crying harder now. I can't deal with my marriage falling apart on top of everything else. I can barely function as it is. Then let me deal with it. Let me ask the questions and find the answers. You focus on taking care of yourself and Justin. I'll handle the rest. Mama. Maya, do you trust me? She wiped her eyes. Nodded. Then trust me on this. I'm not going to do anything to hurt you or make this worse. But I'm also not going to sit by and watch you suffer while your husband does whatever he wants. You hear me? I hear you. That afternoon, Denise called back. Jasmine knows him, she said without preamble. Says he's been a regular at Sweet Lounge for the last month. Shows up 2, 3 times a week. Always with his boys, always spending big money, always got different women hanging around their table. My stomach dropped even though I'd expected it. Different women. That's what she said. She didn't see him leave with anyone. She made a point to mention that, but he's definitely not acting like a married man with a newborn at home. What else did she say? She said he's cocky. Tips big but treats the staff like they're beneath him. The kind of guy who thinks throwing money around makes him important. She said a couple of the other bartenders were talking about him last week because he was there on a Wednesday night until closing, and one of them mentioned seeing him post about his baby on Instagram earlier that day. I closed my eyes. So he's posting about being a father online and then partying like he's single. That's what it looks like. Can Jasmine keep an eye on him? Maybe take some pictures if he's there again. I already asked. She said she can't take pictures. It's against club policy and she could lose her job, but she'll let me know when he comes in and what time he leaves. She works Thursday through Saturday nights, so if he shows up on those days, we'll know. Thank you, Denise. Really? Joyce, what are you planning to do with this information? I don't know yet, but when I figure it out, you'll be the first person I call. That night, Brandon came home at 6 p.m., early for him. He brought takeout from some expensive restaurant, kissed Maya on the forehead, and actually held Justin for 15 minutes while I heated up the food. It would have been almost convincing if I hadn't known better. How was work? I asked, watching him bounce Justin gently. Busy. Really busy. We're closing a huge deal next week, so it's all hands on deck. Must be stressful. It is. That's why I'm trying to make the most of my evenings when I can get home earlier. That's good. Maya needs you here. He looked at me then, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Like he knew I was testing him. Like he was wondering how much I knew. Then he smiled, that same charming smile that had fooled me 3 years ago, and said, I know. I'm trying to balance everything. It's not easy. No, I said quietly. I imagine it's not. He left again at 8:30. Emergency call with a client on the West Coast, he said. I'll be back late. Don't wait up. Maya didn't even question it. She was too tired, too overwhelmed, too beaten down to fight. But I questioned it. And I kept questioning it over the next 3 days as I watched the pattern repeat. Brandon home for a couple hours in the evening, playing the role of concerned husband and father just long enough to maintain the image, then gone until the early hours of the morning. On Thursday night, Denise texted me at 11:47 p.m. He's here.
Suite lounge.
VIP section. 3 other guys. Bottle service already ordered. I sat in Maya's guest room, holding my phone, feeling my pulse pound in my temples. At 2:15 a.m., another text. Just left. Took an Uber. Probably headed home. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, I heard the front door open. On Friday he did it again. Client event, he told Maya. Home at 2:30 a.m. Denise. Here again. Same table. Same setup. One of the women from Wednesday is back. On Saturday I'd had enough. Brandon, I said when he came downstairs at noon, already dressed for another day of work. Can we talk? Sure, Joyce. What's up? He was pouring coffee, scrolling through his phone, barely looking at me. I'm worried about Maya. That got his attention. Why? Is something wrong? She's struggling. More than I think you realize. I think she's dealing with postpartum depression, and she needs more support than she's getting. I'm supporting her. I'm working my ass off to pay for this house, for her medical bills, for everything we need. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about being present. Being here. Helping with Justin. Giving her a break so she can sleep, so she can recover, so she doesn't feel like she's drowning. I help when I'm here. But you're not here. You're gone 12, 14 hours a day. You come home after midnight most nights. Where are all these client dinners and work events? His jaw tightened. That's my job, Joyce. That's how sales works. You have to network, you have to be visible, you have to. You have to party at Sweet Lounge until 2 in the morning 3 times a week? The kitchen went silent. Brandon stared at me. Excuse me? You heard me.
Suite lounge.
Vault. Houston's. Revel. I've seen the credit card statements, Brandon. $8,000 in 3 weeks on clubs and bars. So don't stand here and tell me you're working. Tell me what you're really doing. His face had gone hard. You went through my credit card statements? They were sitting on the counter. Open. And I'm not sorry I looked, because my daughter deserves to know if her husband is lying to her. I'm not lying about anything. Those are business expenses. Entertaining clients, building relationships. At 2 in the morning? With bottle service and VIP sections? Stop insulting my intelligence. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know you've been going to Sweet Lounge multiple times a week. I know you've been there with your friends, and with women who aren't your wife. I know you're spending money you should be saving for your family on living like you're single. So no, Brandon, you don't get to gaslight me. I've been around too long for that. He was breathing hard now, his hands clenched into fists. Does Maya know you're accusing me of this? Not yet. But she will. If you tell her this. If you poison her against me with your suspicions and your jealousy. Jealousy. I actually laughed. Boy, I don't have a jealous bone in my body when it comes to you. What I have is eyes. And a brain. And 32 years of experience dealing with men who think they're smarter than they are. You need to mind your business, Joyce. My daughter and my grandson are my business. And I'm going to make this real simple for you. You have a choice. You can start acting like a husband and father. Or you can keep living like a bachelor. But you don't get to do both. You don't get to post about your beautiful family on Instagram, and then spend every night in a club. You don't get to take credit for being a provider while your wife falls apart, because you're never here. I don't have to listen to this. You're right. You don't. You can walk out right now, go to your clubs, do whatever you want. But know this. I'm going to make sure Maya knows the truth. And I'm going to make sure that when the time comes, and it will come, she has every piece of evidence she needs to protect herself and Justin. Brandon grabbed his keys off the counter and headed for the door. You're making a mistake, he said without turning around. No, I said quietly. You already made the mistake. I'm just making sure you pay for it. He slammed the door on his way out. I stood in that kitchen, my heart racing, my hands shaking, and pulled out my phone. I'd pushed him. Maybe too hard, maybe too soon. But I'd needed to see his reaction. Needed to confirm what I already knew. And now I knew for sure. Brandon wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to wake up and realize what he was losing. He was going to keep doing what he was doing until someone forced him to stop. So that's what I was going to do. I opened a new note on my phone and started a list. Evidence needed. Bank statements, joint account plus credit cards. Documentation of Maya's postpartum condition for custody. Proof of Brandon's absences, dates, times, locations. Witnesses, Jasmine, others. Photos/videos if possible. Record of my own presence/care. I'm the primary caregiver. I'd spent 3 decades documenting in medical charts. Writing notes that could stand up in court if a patient sued. Recording every detail because in healthcare, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. This wasn't so different. I was building a case. Not for revenge, though I wouldn't lie and say that wasn't part of it, but for protection. For Maya. For Justin. Because I knew where this was headed. I'd seen it too many times. The husband who thinks he can have it all. The wife who's too exhausted and too beaten down to fight back. The grandmother who steps in and gets accused of interfering. But this time, I wasn't going to be caught unprepared. This time, I was going to have evidence that no lawyer, no judge, no mediator could dismiss. Upstairs, I heard Justin start crying again. I headed up to get him, already planning my next moves. Brandon thought he'd won that confrontation. Thought he'd put me in my place by walking out. What he didn't understand was that walking out was exactly what I needed him to do. Because every time he left, every time he chose a club over his family, every time he came home at 2 in the morning smelling like alcohol and other people's perfume, he was giving me exactly what I needed to make sure Maya and Justin never had to depend on him again. They thought they'd cornered me, but they forgot one thing about women my age. We've survived worse than cocky salesmen with more ego than sense. And we always keep receipts. The thing about building a case is that you have to be patient. You have to let the other person keep making mistakes while you quietly document every single one. That's what I did for the next 2 weeks. Brandon didn't come home early anymore after our confrontation in the kitchen. Didn't try to pretend he was being a good husband. He'd go straight from work to wherever he was going, sometimes not coming back until morning. Maya noticed. How could she not? But every time she brought it up, he had an excuse. Big client presentation. Team crisis. West Coast calls running late. And Maya, exhausted and overwhelmed and possibly not thinking clearly because of the postpartum depression I was increasingly certain she had, would just nod and try to handle everything alone. Except she wasn't alone. I was there. I'd essentially moved in at that point. My own house in Cascade Heights sat empty, while I spent 23 hours a day in that big Buckhead house, taking care of my grandson, monitoring my daughter's mental health, and documenting everything Brandon did. Every late night, every credit card charge, every social media post that didn't match his reality. Denise kept feeding me information from Jasmine. He was there Thursday and Saturday again this week. He left with his boys around 1 a.m. One of the other bartenders said she saw him getting real friendly with a woman at the bar. I wrote it all down. Dates, times, locations, amounts spent. But I needed more than second-hand accounts. I needed something concrete. That's when I decided to check the joint bank account. Maya had given me access to her computer to order some things for Justin. Diapers, formula, clothes. While I was logged in, I noticed she had her bank website bookmarked. I hesitated for maybe 5 seconds before clicking it. The browser remembered her password. The account opened. I shouldn't have been surprised by what I saw, but I still felt my stomach drop. Their joint checking account had $3,200 in it. Not terrible, but not great for a family with a newborn and one person on maternity leave. But it was the transaction history that made my blood boil. In the last month, Brandon had transferred $6,500 from their joint savings. Money they'd been building to cover Maya's maternity leave, into his personal checking account. Then he'd spent it. Not on bills. Not on the family. On himself. I scrolled through the charges from his personal account that showed up in the joint activity log.
Suite lounge, $620.
Uber, $87. StockX, Luxury sneakers $450. Revel, $380. Hugo Boss, $340. Houston's Lounge, $515. Uber, $92. Rolex Service Center, $250. He was draining their savings to fund his lifestyle. I took screenshots of everything. Every transaction. Every transfer. Every luxury purchase while his wife was at home trying to figure out how to afford groceries. Then I dug deeper. I found their mortgage statements. They were behind 2 months. $4,800 overdue. I found their car payment. Late by 6 weeks. I found hospital bills from Justin's birth. $12,000 still owed, sent to collections. Brandon was making good money. His pay stub showed $8,500 a month after taxes. But he was spending it like he didn't have a family to support. And the bills? He was just ignoring them. I sat there in front of Maya's computer, feeling rage build in my chest like a pressure cooker about to explode. This wasn't just neglect. This was financial abuse. He was putting his family at risk of losing their home, ruining their credit. Also, he could buy luxury sneakers and bottle service. I printed everything. The bank statements. The mortgage notices. The collections letters. The credit card bills. Then I called someone I should have called 2 weeks ago. My nephew Marcus. Marcus was a family law attorney in Atlanta. 38 years old, sharp as a tack, and he'd been through his own messy divorce 5 years ago. He knew exactly how these things played out. Auntie Joyce, he answered warmly. It's been too long. How are you? I need legal advice. About Maya. His tone shifted immediately. What's going on? I told him everything. The clubs. The spending. The neglect. The financial situation. The postpartum depression. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. How bad is Maya's mental health right now? He asked. Bad enough that I'm worried. She's not sleeping. She cries constantly. She said things that scare me. Nothing about hurting herself or the baby, but just hopeless things. Like she's failing, like she can't do this, like she wishes she'd never had Justin. Has she seen a doctor? I've been trying to get her to go, but she keeps saying she doesn't have time, or Brandon needs the car, or she can't afford it right now. The can't afford it part is interesting, given what you just told me about Brandon's spending. That's what I thought. Okay, here's what you need to understand. If Maya files for divorce, and I think she should, her mental health is going to be a factor in custody. But so is Brandon's neglect and financial irresponsibility. The fact that you've been the primary caregiver, the fact that you have documentation of all of this, that's good. Really good. What do I need to do? First, get Maya to a doctor. A real evaluation for postpartum depression. If she's diagnosed and gets treatment, that actually works in her favor because it shows she's taking her mental health seriously. What hurts in custody cases is untreated mental health conditions that affect the child's safety. Treatment shows responsibility. Okay. Second, keep documenting everything you're documenting. Dates, times, amounts, everything. Get screenshots, keep receipts, save text messages. I'll send you a secure folder link where you can upload everything. What about Jasmine? The bartender who's been seeing him at the club. She could be a witness if it comes to that. But honestly, the financial records are going to do most of the heavy lifting here. You've got proof that he's been draining their savings, missing payments on critical bills, and spending thousands on personal entertainment while his wife and child are at home struggling. That alone is enough to establish a pattern of financial irresponsibility and neglect. Would Maya get the house? If she wants it. Georgia law tends to favor primary caregivers in custody disputes, and custody and asset division often go hand in hand. If Maya can show she's been the primary caregiver, and you can testify to that, and if Brandon's been financially irresponsible, the court's likely to award her primary custody and the family home. I felt something loosen in my chest. So we have a case. Auntie Joyce, you have more than a case. You have a slam dunk. But there's one problem. What? Does Maya want a divorce? That was the question, wasn't it? Because I had all this evidence, all these plans, all this documentation. But none of it mattered if Maya wasn't ready to leave. That night, I tried to talk to her about it. We were in the nursery together. I was holding Justin while Maya folded the tiny clothes that never seemed to stay clean for more than an hour. "Baby," I said carefully, "we need to talk about Brandon." Her hands stilled on a onesie. "Mama, please. Not tonight. I know you're tired. I know this is hard. But you need to know what I found." "I don't want to know. I can't handle any more right now." "Maya." "Mama, stop." She turned to face me, and I saw tears streaming down her face. "Just stop. I know what you're going to say. I know he's not being a good husband. I know he's out partying while I'm here falling apart. I know he's spending money we don't have. I know all of it, okay? I know. Then why are you staying?" "Because I don't have a choice." Her voice broke. "Because I can't take care of Justin by myself. Because I can't afford this house on my salary. Because if I leave him, I have nothing. No home, no help, no way to make this work. At least right now I have the house and you're here. And I can pretend like maybe it'll get better. It's not going to get better. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. And so do you." I stood up, still holding Justin. "Baby, listen to me. You're not trapped. You think you need him, but you don't. Marcus can help us. We can get you custody, child support, this house. I don't want my marriage to end." She was sobbing now. "I don't want Justin to grow up without his father. I don't want to be a single mother like you had to be. I don't want. You don't want to be like me." The words hung in the air between us. Maya's face crumpled. "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it was. And it's okay. I understand." I walked over to her, adjusted Justin so I could put one arm around her shoulders. "But Maya, I need you to hear something. Being a single mother was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But you know what was harder? Watching women stay in marriages with men who didn't value them, didn't respect them, didn't contribute to the family except with a paycheck and an occasional appearance. I saw those women in the hospital all the time. Exhausted. Depressed. Stuck. And you know what I promised myself? That I would never let my daughter become one of them. But I love him." "I know you do. But love isn't enough when the other person isn't showing up. Love isn't enough when you're doing everything alone anyway. Love isn't enough when he's draining your savings to party while you can't pay the mortgage." She pulled back. "What?" The meeting with Marcus was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. On Tuesday night, Brandon didn't come home at all. Maya called him 17 times. 17 calls that went straight to voicemail. "Maybe something happened," she said, pacing the living room at midnight with Justin crying in her arms. "Maybe he's hurt, or in an accident, or—" "He's fine," I said. "He's avoiding you because he knows what's coming tomorrow." "You don't know that." But we both knew. We both knew exactly what he was doing. At 3:47 a.m., he finally texted, "Staying at Derek's tonight. Need space to think." Maya stared at that text for 5 full minutes. "He doesn't even have the guts to face me," she said quietly. "No. He doesn't." Wednesday morning, Maya got herself and Justin ready with a determination I hadn't seen in weeks. She showered, put on real clothes instead of pajamas, did her hair, put on makeup, looked like herself for the first time since Justin was born. "You look beautiful," I told her. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. You're about to do one of the hardest things you've ever done. But you're also about to take your life back." We drove to Marcus's office in Midtown, a sleek high-rise with glass windows and marble floors. The kind of place that reminded you that you were dealing with serious people who handled serious business. Marcus met us in the lobby and led us upstairs to his conference room. It had a view of the Atlanta skyline, expensive furniture, and a table that could seat 12 people. He'd prepared. Spread across that table were printed copies of everything I'd sent him. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage notices, collections letters, transaction histories, all of it organized into neat folders with color-coded tabs. Maya sat down and stared at it all. "Is this really everything?" she asked. "This is everything your mother sent me," Marcus said gently. And it's more than enough. He spent the next hour walking us through the process. How the divorce would work. What Maya was entitled to under Georgia law. What we could expect Brandon to fight for. What the timeline looked like. Based on what I'm seeing here, Marcus said, you have a strong case for primary custody. Brandon's absence during the first month of Justin's life, combined with his financial irresponsibility, creates a clear pattern of neglect. Add in your mother's testimony about being the primary caregiver, and the fact that you've sought treatment for postpartum depression. You did see the doctor yesterday, right? Maya nodded. She diagnosed me and put me on medication. Perfect. That's going to help. It shows you're taking your mental health seriously, which is what the court wants to see. What about the house? I asked. The house is in both their names, but given that Maya's been the one living there with the child, and given Brandon's financial mismanagement, I'm confident we can argue that it should be awarded to Maya as part of the custody arrangement. Brandon can buy out her portion of the equity or we can force a sale, but either way, she'd have first right of refusal. What about child support? Maya asked, her voice small. Based on his income and George's child support calculator, he'd owe roughly $1,800 a month. More if we can factor in his extra spending. I watched Maya process that number. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was something. It was a start. When do I file? She asked. We can file today if you're ready. Or we can wait until you've had more time to think about it. There's no rush if you're not. I'm ready. Maya's voice was stronger now. I'm ready to file. Marcus smiled. Then let's do it. It took another 2 hours to fill out all the paperwork. To detail every aspect of the marriage, the finances, the childcare arrangements. To put into legal language what had been my daughter's life for the last 3 years. When it was done, Marcus handed her a pen and showed her where to sign. Maya's hand shook as she signed her name, but she didn't hesitate. What happens now? She asked. Now we file this with the court. Brandon will be served within 48 hours. He'll have 30 days to respond. In the meantime, we can file for temporary custody and support, which means you'd get interim payments and legal protection while the divorce is pending. Will he fight it? Probably. Most people do. But Maya, you need to understand something. The evidence we have makes this a very straightforward case. Unless he can prove he's been an active, present father and financially responsible, which he can't. The court is going to rule in your favor. After we left Marcus's office, Maya was quiet on the drive back to Buckhead. You okay? I asked. I don't know. I feel like I just made a decision I can't take back. You can't. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. What if he changes? What if seeing the divorce papers makes him realize what he's losing? Then he'll have to prove it through his actions, not his words. And even if he changes, that doesn't mean you have to stay married to him. Sometimes people change too late. When we got back to the house, Brandon's car was in the driveway. Maya's whole body tensed. I don't want to see him right now. You don't have to. I'll go in first. Get Justin settled. You come in when you're ready. I walked into the house carrying Justin in his car seat. Brandon was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked like he hadn't slept. Still wearing yesterday's clothes, his hair a mess, his eyes bloodshot. Where's Maya? He asked. In the car. She'll come in when she's ready. We need to talk. You've had 3 weeks to talk. You chose clubs and parties instead. Joyce, you need to understand. I've been under a lot of pressure. The job is demanding, and I've been trying to provide for this family. By spending $20,000 on yourself? Those were business expenses. No, Brandon. They weren't. And we both know it. And more importantly, a judge is going to know it, because we filed for divorce today. The color drained from his face. You what? Maya filed for divorce. You'll be served in the next day or 2. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you have any sense at all, you'll agree to a fair settlement. Because if you fight this, you're going to lose everything. You can't do this. Maya wouldn't, she loves me. She does love you. That's the tragedy of all of this. She loves you enough that she's been making excuses for you, covering for you, trying to convince herself that you'll change. But I don't love you, Brandon. And I'm not going to sit by and watch you destroy my daughter's life because you want to play both sides. I want to talk to her. And she'll talk to you when she's ready. But right now, you need to leave. This is my house. Actually, according to the temporary custody order Marcus filed this afternoon, this is Maya's house until the court says otherwise. So again, you need to leave. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to prove to the court that I'm a good father, that I've been providing for this family, that you've been poisoning Maya against me. You do that. And when the court sees the credit card statements, the mortgage notices, the bank accounts, the testimony from the bartender at Sweet Lounge who's seen you there 3 times a week with different women, when they hear from me about how many nights I've spent here taking care of your son while you were out living like you're single, you tell me who they're going to believe. His jaw clenched. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. After he left, Maya came inside. She looked pale, fragile, like a strong wind might knock her over. Is he gone? She asked. He's gone. She nodded. Took Justin from me. Sat down at the kitchen table, where Brandon had been sitting just moments before. I keep thinking I'll feel relieved, she said. But I just feel sad. That's okay. You can be sad and still know you did the right thing. I thought he'd fight harder. I thought he'd beg me to reconsider or promise to change or something. But he just left. Because he knows he doesn't have a case. And deep down he probably knows he doesn't deserve you. We sat in silence for a while, the late afternoon sun streaming through those expensive windows, Justin sleeping peacefully in Maya's arms. What happens now? She asked finally. Now we wait. We let the legal process play out. We focus on getting you healthy and Justin taken care of. We take it one day at a time. Will you stay? As long as you need me, baby. I'm not going anywhere. The next 3 months were a blur of court dates and lawyer meetings and therapy appointments. Brandon fought the divorce. Not hard, but enough to be difficult. He claimed I'd manipulated Maya. Claimed the evidence was misrepresented. Claimed he was a victim of circumstance and poor timing. But Marcus was right. The evidence spoke for itself. The bank statements showing $20,000 spent on clubs in 3 months while the mortgage went unpaid. The testimony from Jasmine, the bartender, about his regular presence at Sweet Lounge. My own testimony about the hours I'd spent as the primary caregiver. And most damning of all, Brandon's complete inability to demonstrate any meaningful involvement in Justin's care. The judge asked him basic questions. What's your son's pediatrician's name? When was his last checkup? What's his feeding schedule? What calms him down when he's crying? Brandon couldn't answer a single one. But I could. And Marcus made sure the judge knew it. In the end, the settlement was almost exactly what Marcus had predicted. Maya got primary custody, with Brandon getting supervised visitation every other weekend. Child support of $1,850 a month. The house, with Brandon required to sign over his half of the equity. And an additional payment of $10,000 to reimburse for the money he'd taken from savings. Brandon's lawyer tried to negotiate it down, but Marcus was ruthless. Your client spent $20,000 on personal entertainment while his wife and child were at home struggling, Marcus said in the mediation. The fact that we're not asking for more is generous. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October, 6 months after Justin was born. Maya, Marcus, and I went out to dinner afterward at a restaurant in Virginia Highland. Nothing fancy, just good food and good company. How do you feel? Marcus asked Maya. Free, she said. And terrified. And relieved. And sad. All of it at once. That's normal. Is it weird that I still love him? Even after everything? No, I said. Love doesn't just disappear because someone hurts you. But love also doesn't mean you have to stay with someone who won't treat you right. Aunt Joyce is right, Marcus said. You can love who he could have been and still protect yourself from who he actually is. Maya nodded, playing with the stem of her water glass. I keep thinking about what you said, Mama, about how being a single mother was hard, but watching women stay in bad marriages was harder. I get it now. I'm scared of doing this alone, but I'm not as scared as I was of staying with someone who was already making me feel alone. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're not alone. You've got me. You've got Justin. You've got Marcus and Denise and everyone at church who's been praying for you. And you've got yourself, which is more than enough. Plus, Marcus added with a smile, you've got $1,800 a month coming in and a mortgage-free house. You're in a better financial position now than you were when you were married. It was true. Once Brandon signed over the house and paid back the $10,000, Maya was actually stable. Not wealthy. Not comfortable in the way she'd imagined when she married a man with a six-figure salary, but stable in a way she'd never been with Brandon. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Maya threw Justin's first birthday party. Not at some expensive venue in Buckhead. Not with a professional photographer and a candy table that costs more than most people's monthly rent. She threw it in my backyard in Cascade Heights. The same backyard where I'd had her first birthday party 27 years ago. We strung up lights between the trees, set up folding tables with plastic tablecloths, made potato salad and baked beans and fried chicken, real food, not catered nonsense. Denise brought her famous pound cake. Tasha came with balloons. Angela brought gifts she'd been collecting for months. The church ladies showed up. All of them, the ones who'd been praying for Maya through the whole ordeal. Sister Williams, Sister Patterson, Mother Green, who was 83 and still sharp as a tack. Marcus came with his new girlfriend, a sweet woman who worked as a paralegal and looked at him like he'd hung the moon. And Maya? Maya looked like herself again. Her hair was natural now. She'd cut off the relaxed ends and let her curls come back. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost during those dark postpartum months. Her eyes were bright. Her laugh was real. She was wearing jeans and a simple top, holding Justin on her hip while he grabbed at everything in reach. And she looked more beautiful than she ever had in all those designer clothes Brandon used to buy her. Justin was walking now, well, toddling, taking 3 or 4 steps before falling on his padded bottom and laughing. He had Maya's eyes and my mother's smile. And he was happy. Really, genuinely happy in the way babies are when they're surrounded by people who love them without condition. Brandon was invited. Maya had texted him the details 2 weeks before. He'd responded, I'll try to make it. He didn't show. At 2 p.m., right when we were about to cut the cake, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from him. Sorry, got caught up with work. I'll drop off his gift next weekend. He never did. Maya read the text, and I watched her face carefully, looking for signs of the old hurt, the old disappointment, the old pattern of making excuses for him. But she just shook her head, put her phone away and said, Okay, who wants cake? And that's when I knew she'd really healed. Not because she wasn't hurt. You don't stop loving someone overnight, and you don't stop wishing your child's father would be better just because he keeps proving he won't be. But because she didn't let his absence ruin the day. She didn't spend the party checking her phone, hoping he'd still show up. She didn't apologize to everyone for him not being there. She just kept celebrating her son with the people who'd actually shown up. After the party, after everyone had left and it was just me and Maya cleaning up while Justin napped in my guest room, she said something I'll never forget. Mama, I used to think the worst thing that could happen was becoming a single mother. I used to think that if my marriage failed, it meant I failed. And now, I asked, tying up a garbage bag. Now I realize the worst thing would have been staying. Raising Justin in a house where his father treated his mother like she didn't matter. Teaching him that love looks like neglect. That marriage means one person does everything while the other one does whatever they want. She wiped down the table. I'd rather be a single mother raising my son right than a married woman teaching him wrong. I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. You know that's exactly what I needed to hear. I learned it from you. No, baby. You learned it from yourself. I just gave you permission to trust what you already knew. She smiled at me, that real smile, the one I'd missed so much during those dark months, and said, Thank you for not letting me settle. Thank you for pushing me when I didn't want to be pushed. Thank you for loving me enough to make me uncomfortable. That's what mothers do. We love you enough to tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. We finished cleaning in comfortable silence, and I thought about how far she'd come. How far we'd both come. A year ago, she'd been falling apart in that big house in Buckhead. Too exhausted and too beaten down to see a way out. Now she was here, in my modest backyard, celebrating her son's first birthday surrounded by people who loved her for real. And if you asked me which version of her life was richer, there wouldn't be any contest. About 6 months after the divorce, Maya started going to a support group for single mothers at our church. At first, I wasn't sure how she'd feel about it. There's a stigma sometimes, you know? Like going to a support group means you're broken, means you couldn't handle things on your own. But Maya surprised me. I need to be around other women who get it, she told me. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one going through this. The group met every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. in the church fellowship hall. I'd watch Justin while Maya went, and when she came home, she'd tell me about the other women. There was Keisha, 29, whose husband had left when their twins were 6 months old. Just packed a bag one day and moved to Florida with a woman he'd met online. There was Sandra, 34, whose husband was in prison for fraud. She was raising their 3 kids alone, working 2 jobs, trying to keep the lights on. There was Nicole, 41, whose husband had died suddenly of a heart attack. She was grieving while trying to be strong for her 2 teenagers. There was Jasmine. Yes, the same Jasmine from Sweet Lounge, Denise's daughter. She'd left her boyfriend after he put his hands on her while she was pregnant. She had a 1-year-old daughter and was living with her mother while she finished cosmetology school. All of them had different stories, different reasons for being single mothers, different struggles. But what Maya said she loved about the group was this. Nobody made excuses for the men who'd failed them, but nobody sat around playing victim either. They talked about childcare solutions, about job opportunities, about how to navigate co-parenting with difficult exes, about filing for child support and food stamps without shame, about going back to school, about starting businesses, about dating again, or choosing not to. They prayed together. They cried together. They celebrated each other's wins. And slowly, Maya started to see herself not as a woman whose marriage had failed, but as a woman building something new. One Thursday night, about 8 months into the divorce, Maya came home from group and told me this story. One of the new women tonight was talking about how embarrassed she was, about how she felt like a failure because her marriage didn't work out. And you know what Keisha said to her? What? She said, "Girl, you didn't fail. You survived. You recognized you were in a situation that was killing you, and you got out. That's not failure. That's wisdom. That's strength. That's you choosing yourself and your babies over somebody else's comfort. Don't you dare call that failure." Maya's eyes were shiny with tears when she told me. And then all of us just started talking about the things we used to think were failures that we now see as victories. Leaving. Filing for divorce. Asking for help. Admitting we couldn't do it all alone. Going on WIC. Moving back in with our parents. All the things we thought made us less than. We're realizing those things saved us. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That's what happens when you're around the right people. They help you see yourself clearly. I wish I'd had this group 2 years ago. Before I married him. Maybe I would have seen the signs. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to go through what you went through to become who you are now. She thought about that for a minute. You really believe that? That I needed all that pain? I don't think you needed the pain. But I think you needed the lesson. And sometimes the only way we learn certain lessons is by living through the hard thing. By making the mistake. By trusting the wrong person. And then figuring out how to trust ourselves again. That's deep, Mama. It's true. And look at you now. You're not just surviving, you're helping other women survive. Keisha told you something you needed to hear once. Next month, you'll say something another woman needs to hear. That's how we heal. Together. Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm going to keep going to that group. Even when things get better. Even when I don't feel like I need it anymore. Because somebody's going to walk in there 6 months from now feeling exactly how I felt 6 months ago. and I want to be there to tell her she's going to make it. And she did. She kept going. And about a year later, she became one of the group facilitators. My daughter, the one who'd been too broken to get out of bed a year before, was now helping other women find their way through the darkness. If that's not redemption, I don't know what is. I wish I could say Brandon learned his lesson. That losing his wife and son woke him up. That he got his act together and became the father Justin deserved. But that's not what happened. About 8 months after the divorce, Maya got a call from Brandon's father, Richard. He'd left Vanessa, just like he said he would. Filed for divorce, moved into an apartment in Midtown, started the process of untangling 31 years of marriage to a woman who'd built her entire identity on lies and manipulation. But he was calling about Brandon. I don't know if Maya told you, Richard said, but Brandon lost his job 3 months ago. Maya hadn't known. Brandon hadn't mentioned it. He just kept making excuses for why the child support payments were late, why he couldn't afford to take Justin for his weekends, why he needed to get back on his feet. What happened? Maya asked. He was fired for inappropriate conduct. Apparently he'd been taking clients to clubs and expensing it as business entertainment. But it came out that most of these clients were just his friends. He'd been defrauding the company for over a year. They could have pressed charges, but they just fired him instead. Maya had told me all of this later that night, her voice flat, emotionless. He could have gone to jail, she said. He was stealing from his company the whole time he was stealing from us. But it got worse. Without his 6-figure salary, Brandon couldn't afford his lifestyle. He'd moved into a cheaper apartment, sold his car, and bought something used. Stopped going out to clubs, not because he'd learned anything, but because he couldn't afford it anymore. And the child support payments? He filed to have them reduced, claiming hardship. Marcus fought it. Showed the judge that Brandon had been fired for cause, that his financial situation was a result of his own choices, that he'd spent $20,000 on entertainment while neglecting his family. The judge denied the reduction request. But that didn't mean Brandon paid. He fell behind. 2 months. 3 months. 6 months. The payments went into arrears, and every time Maya's lawyer contacted him, he had a new excuse. I'm between jobs. I'm starting a consulting business. I'm waiting on a big commission check. Meanwhile, Justin was growing up without a father. Brandon would go months without calling. Would miss scheduled visitations without explanation. Would promise to come to Justin's daycare events and then not show up. And every time, Maya would have to be the one to explain to a toddler why Daddy wasn't there. Why Daddy didn't call. Why Daddy said he'd come and then didn't. It broke my heart watching her do that. Watching her protect Brandon's image to their son, even though Brandon did nothing to earn it. Why do you still cover for him? I asked her once, after Brandon had missed Justin's 2nd birthday. I'm not covering for him. I'm protecting Justin. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because one day, Justin's going to be old enough to ask real questions. And when he does, I'm going to tell him the truth. But right now he's 2. He doesn't need to know his father is a disappointment. He just needs to know he's loved. I couldn't argue with that. But I did keep track. Every missed visit. Every late payment. Every broken promise. Because I knew that one day, Justin would ask questions. And when he did, I wanted to have answers. Documented answers. The last I heard, Brandon was working in sales again. Some smaller company, making half what he used to make. He'd moved in with a girlfriend none of us had met. Still wasn't paying child support regularly. Still wasn't showing up for his son. And Maya? Maya had stopped expecting anything from him. She'd built a life that didn't need him in it. A good life. A stable life. And Justin was thriving despite his father's absence. Maybe even because of it. Because sometimes the best thing a bad father can do is stay away. 2 years after Maya's divorce, I was sitting in my living room with Justin on my lap, reading him a book about trucks, his current obsession, when Maya came over with something she wanted to talk about. Mama, I've been thinking about dating again. I looked up from the book. Justin was pointing at a picture of a fire truck, making siren sounds. Okay, I said carefully. How are you feeling about that? Terrified. She sat down on the couch next to us. I don't even know where to start. And I'm scared I'll make the same mistake again. That I'll ignore red flags because I want to believe someone is better than they are. That's a real fear. So how do I do it differently this time? How do I make sure I don't end up with another Brandon? I closed the book and shifted Justin to my other knee, so I could look at Maya properly. You want the real answer? Always. You don't date anybody until you're so solid in yourself, so clear about what you will and won't accept, that the wrong men can't even get close to you. You build boundaries so strong that only the right kind of man can cross them. How do I know what my boundaries should be? You make a list, right now, of everything Brandon did that hurt you. Every lie, every broken promise, every time he chose himself over you and Justin. And then you decide. These things are non-negotiable deal breakers. If I see these signs again, I walk away immediately. No second chances. No benefit of the doubt. No waiting to see if he'll change. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. Okay, what should be on the list? You tell me. What hurt the most? She thought for a moment. When he wasn't there. When I was struggling and he chose to be anywhere but home. So one of your boundaries is, any man I'm with has to show up. Not just physically, but emotionally. When I need him, he's there. Not 2 hours later, not the next day. There, when I need him. She typed that into her phone. What else? I asked. The lying. The way he lied about where he was, what he was doing, how he was spending money. I can't live like that again. I can't be with someone I don't trust. So complete honesty. About everything. Money, time, feelings, plans. If I catch you in a lie, even a small one, we're done. Because if you lie about small things, you'll lie about big things. She typed that too. We kept going for another 30 minutes, building her list. He has to respect my role as a mother. He doesn't get to make me choose between him and my child. He has to have his own relationship with God. I'm not doing the spiritual work for both of us. He has to handle his money responsibly. I'm not fixing another man's financial mess. He has to respect my family. He doesn't have to love my mother, but he has to treat her with respect. He has to be kind to service workers, waitstaff, people he doesn't need anything from. Because that shows his real character. He has to be willing to go to therapy if we hit problems. No, we can figure it out ourselves when we clearly can't. He has to be consistent. His words have to match his actions. I'm done with men who talk a good game but don't follow through. When we were done, Maya looked at her list and said, "This seems like a lot." It's not. It's the bare minimum. And here's the thing, baby. Any man who thinks these standards are too high is telling you exactly who he is. A good man will look at this list and say, of course. That's how you're supposed to treat someone you love. What if I never find someone who meets all these? Then you stay single. And you know what? Single is better than settling. Single is better than compromising on things that matter. Single is better than another 5 years of being lonely in a relationship. She looked at Justin, who'd gotten bored with our conversation, and was now playing with his toy cars on the floor. I don't want him to grow up thinking he has to save me, or that relationships are supposed to be hard. Then you show him what a strong woman looks like. You show him that his mother has standards and keeps them. That she doesn't need a man, but she's open to a good man if one comes along. You show him that love is supposed to add to your life, not drain it. You did that for me, you know. Even though I didn't appreciate it at the time. I know you didn't. That's okay. You weren't supposed to appreciate it then. You were supposed to live your life, make your mistakes, and learn your lessons. And now you have. And now you're going to do better. What if I mess up again? Then you mess up again. But this time, you'll mess up with your eyes open. And you'll get out faster. And you'll learn the lesson quicker. That's growth, Maya. That's all any of us can do. Keep learning, keep growing, keep getting better at recognizing what we deserve. She saved her list and put her phone away. I'm not ready yet, she said. To date, I mean. I think I need more time. Then take more time. There's no rush. Justin needs a present mother more than he needs a stepfather. Focus on you. Focus on him. Focus on building the life you want. The right man will fit into that life. He won't require you to rebuild everything around him. How will I know when I'm ready? You'll know. Because when you're ready, you won't be afraid of being alone anymore. You'll like your own company so much that you'll only want to share it with someone who adds something real. And that's exactly what happened. Maya took 2 more years before she started dating again. And when she did, she went slow. She kept her boundaries. She introduced Justin to anyone until she'd been seeing them for 6 months. And eventually, she met someone good. Someone who showed up. Someone who treated her like she mattered. But that's a different story for a different time. People ask me sometimes if I have any regrets about how I handled things with Brandon and Maya. If I pushed too hard. If I should have let Maya figure it out on her own. If I overstepped. And my answer is always the same, no. Because here's what I've learned in 58 years on this earth, 32 of them as a nurse, 27 of them as a single mother. Sometimes love means making people uncomfortable. Sometimes it means saying the things nobody else will say. Sometimes it means being the bad guy for a little while, so the people you love can be safe for a lifetime. I've seen too many women suffer in silence because nobody loved them enough to speak up. I've seen too many mothers enable their sons' bad behavior because they didn't want to rock the boat. I've seen too many families fall apart because everyone was more concerned with keeping the peace than telling the truth. And I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't be that person. I wouldn't be the mother who smiled and nodded while her daughter's husband destroyed her. I wouldn't be the grandmother who looked the other way while my grandson grew up in a house where his mother was disrespected. Did it cost me something? Yes. There were months where Maya barely spoke to me. Months where she was so angry at me for ruining her marriage that she wouldn't take my calls. There were moments when I wondered if I'd lost her forever. If I'd pushed so hard that I'd pushed her away for good. But I kept reminding myself, I'm not trying to be her friend. I'm trying to be her mother. And mothers don't just show up for the easy parts. We show up for the hard conversations, the confrontations, the interventions, the moments when we have to choose between being liked and being right. And you know what? Maya came back. Not because I backed down or apologized for protecting her, but because once she got clear of the situation, once she could see it without Brandon whispering in her ear, she realized I'd been right all along. She realized that what felt like judgment was actually love. That what felt like interference was actually rescue. That what felt like me not supporting her marriage was actually me supporting her. I think about all the times in my career when I had to be the nurse who told a family the truth they didn't want to hear. When I had to be the one to say, your mother isn't going to get better. It's time to think about comfort care. When I had to be the one to call Child Protective Services because I saw bruises on a kid that nobody else seemed to notice. I was never popular for those moments. Families got angry at me, accused me of being cold, of giving up too soon, of meddling where I wasn't wanted. But you know what? I didn't become a nurse to be popular. I became a nurse to help people. And sometimes helping people means doing the hard thing nobody else wants to do. The same is true for being a mother. I didn't raise Maya to be nice. I raised her to be strong, to be smart, to know her worth, to demand respect. And when she temporarily forgot those lessons, when Brandon's charm and money made her doubt what I'd taught her, I had to remind her. Not gently, not subtly, but directly and firmly, the way you'd remind someone who's sleepwalking toward a cliff. Do I wish it could have been easier? Of course. Do I wish Maya could have seen the truth without all that pain? Absolutely. But sometimes we have to feel the pain before we're ready to change. Sometimes we have to lose something before we understand what it was costing us to keep it. And my job as her mother wasn't to prevent all pain. It was to make sure that when the pain came, she had the tools to survive it, the strength to endure it, the wisdom to learn from it. That's what I gave her. Not a rescue, not a solution, but a mirror that showed her the truth, and a hand to hold while she figured out what to do with that truth. And now, 3 years later, I watch her living her life, really living it, not just surviving it, and I know I made the right choice. She's happy. Justin's happy. And she's teaching him, through her actions every single day, what love is supposed to look like. Real love. The kind that shows up. The kind that does the work. The kind that doesn't make you choose between being valued and being wanted. She's teaching him that his mother is strong, that she has boundaries, that she won't accept disrespect, not from his father, not from anyone. And one day, when he's grown, when he's choosing his own partners, he's going to remember watching his mother stand her ground. He's going to remember that strength looks like a woman who loved herself enough to walk away from what was hurting her. And hopefully, he'll choose better than his father did. That's the legacy I'm leaving. That's the lesson I'm passing down. Not how to avoid hard things, but how to face them with dignity. How to protect yourself and your children. How to recognize when love has stopped being love and started being something else. How to document everything, build your case, and walk away with your head held high. That's what women like us do. We don't just survive. We teach the next generation how to survive too. And maybe if we're lucky, we teach them how to do more than survive. We teach them how to thrive.